Dear friends, today we have with us Pallavi Sinha, who is co-chair Liberal Party Friends of India. She was also the only Indian origin candidate from the Liberal Party in the New South Wales state elections in 2019. She was a candidate from the upper house, and we are happy to have her with us today. Good morning, Pallavi, and thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Pallavi, and good morning and hello to all your viewers as well. It's an absolute pleasure, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to join you today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Pallavi, tell us something about your background and also how did you decide to come into politics?
That's an excellent question. And look, in terms of my background, so I'm the daughter of Indian origin migrants. So they migrated here over 40 years ago. And, back then there were actually hardly any Indian Australians in Australia and New South Wales. Of course, it's a completely different story now with at least around 700,000 odd Australian of Indian origin across Australia. And the Indian community is reported by some sources as being the fastest growing ethnic community in New South Wales. So my story is one of being a daughter of Indian migrants, and for that reason, I always appreciate the migrant story and the story of hardworking Australians. When my parents came here, my brother was about 2 years old. He was very young. And then I was born a few years later. So that's a bit about how I was born. Then, in terms of my schooling, so I studied here in New South Wales, and then I chose to do law over medicine, and I did economics, social science, and law degrees from the University of Sydney. I always wanted to fight and stand up for what is right, so that is something that drew me towards a law degree.
Yeah. Pallavi, if we are to talk about the to USA or UK, and now of course you have an Indian origin prime minister in UK. Even in the US, you see quite a bit of representation from the Indian origin community, but you don't find it that much here in Australia. Do you think there are any specific reasons for that? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I hope the time will come one day. As you mentioned, there are many Indian origin actual members of parliament in the US, in Canada, and of course now the Indian origin Prime Minister of the Britain, Mr. Rishi Sunak, and he's also a practicing Hindu. And it is excellent and vital for those countries to have someone who's energetic, intelligent, driven, and also can help build relations with India, which, as you know, is a growing superpower and the world's largest democracy. So I often say to people, I don't think that Australia should always be following the UK. We should lead in this regard. And I think it's critical to our India-Australia relationship for there to be an Indian origin person in Parliament, sitting in the government. And as you mentioned, yes, there is no one in the Liberal Party presently of Indian origin that is in state or federal parliament.
Yeah. Now, besides politics, Pallavi, you also do a lot of advocacy work. You are a lawyer, but you also do a lot of advocacy work. So, can you tell us about the areas where you have worked in?
Yes, oh, absolutely. That's an absolute pleasure to talk about. And it's interesting how this advocacy work led to my interest in politics because I wasn't a young liberal, so I didn't join the young liberal movements at university. I was very active in different associations and community work. For example, in year 12 at school, I was the Rotary Interact president. At university, I was the vice president of the Sydney University Indian Association. And as I then joined the workplace in law firms such as King & Wood Mallisons, and I also did a lot of education work with different universities, I also became more active with advocacy. I was the youngest person appointed to the Indian Ministerial Consultative Committee when that was set up by the New South Wales State Government a few years ago. And I've also been very active, particularly in the advocacy space, for small business, in education, gender, and domestic and family violence. And it is this advocacy which actually led me to an interest in politics, because I started to meet ministers, I started to find out about how legislation and policy is developed and influenced. And I thought, what better a place to then be able to serve and contribute than Parliament?
Yeah. And just lastly, what would you say to a lot of new migrants who have come to Australia from India, who may not be that glued into politics here? What would you like to say to them?
Well, I would encourage them actually to be more actively involved. Indian origin people are often cited as being the highest source country for citizenship. So they are eligible voters and they should exercise their right to vote with an informed way. So they should, whether it's joining a political party or whether it's watching the news, watching candidates who are coming to the scene and seeking an opportunity to serve the community like myself, really do get involved. It is a fantastic way to then contribute to the Australian society and what policies, procedures, and legislation are being passed and implemented and developed in Australia as well.
Yeah. Uh, Pallavi, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Pallavi, to you and to all your viewers as well who are watching today.